London hums beneath the rain. In a small apartment filled with camera gear and unfinished dreams, Emma scrolls through an online photography forum. That's when she sees him. Khalid al-Rashid. His words are elegant, his compliments wrapped in poetry. Within hours, they're exchanging stories, sunsets, travel, purpose. Emma, who's always believed in the magic of connection, feels a spark that feels too vivid to question. As nights turn to dawns, her heart begins orbiting a man she's never met. Weeks pass. Their messages become daily rituals. Emma shares her travel photos. Khalid sends poems, songs, promises. His charm feels endless, his attention intoxicating. When he calls her Habibti, she blushes as if he's beside her. Layla, her roommate and closest friend, watches her drift deeper into this digital fairy tale. Emma, people online aren't who they seem, she warns. But Emma's heart has already decided what's real. Khalid sends her a first-class ticket to Dubai. "Come see my world," he writes. The words echo in her mind all night. Layla begs her to wait, to think. But Emma sees it differently. Not as risk, but destiny. The next morning, she calls in her resignation, packs her camera, and begins to imagine the life waiting on the other side of the ocean. Heathrow Airport is a blur of noise and motion. Khalid's voice echoes in her ear through her earbuds. "I can't wait to hold you." It's enough to quiet the fear beneath her chest. As the plane rises through the clouds, she presses her forehead against the window. The city lights below shrink into pinpoints, like the life she's leaving behind. Dubai's heat hits like a wall of fire. Outside the airport, a black luxury car idles by the curb. A man named Amir stands beside it, polite, quiet, unreadable. "Welcome to your new home," he says, opening the door. As the car speeds toward the horizon, Emma gazes out the window. The desert stretches endlessly, and far ahead, a palace rises like a dream. She smiles, unaware that the mirage she's chasing is already beginning to close around her. The palace was everything Khalid promised. Marble corridors, perfumed air, and an endless hush that made her footsteps sound too small. He greeted her like a man meeting fate. His eyes soft, his smile practiced. "You are safe here," he said, leading her past glittering halls. That night he introduced her to staff who bowed deeply but never spoke. Emma mistook their silence for respect. It was something else entirely. Days passed in a haze of indulgence. Private dinners by candlelight, desert rides at sunrise, jeweled gifts placed in her hands like offerings. Khalid never raised his voice, never broke the charm, but his questions grew sharper. Where she'd been, who she'd spoken to, why she'd left her phone unattended. Emma laughed it off. Love, she told herself, comes with concern. One morning, Khalid led her through a private garden. Petals drifted from palm trees as he dropped to one knee, holding a diamond ring that caught the sun like fire. "Marry me, Emma," he said, his voice low, confident, absolute. The world tilted around her, dizzying, dreamlike. She whispered, yes, before she even realized she'd spoken. The engagement was a blur. Tailor's silks, gold, and smiles that didn't reach the eyes. The palace seemed to close around her with each new gift. When she called Layla to share the news, the line broke mid-conversation. Khalid appeared moments later, claiming the network was unreliable. "Don't worry," he said. "You don't need London anymore." His hand rested on her shoulder a second too long. That night, Emma stood on the palace balcony, the desert wind cooling her flushed skin. She should have felt elated, engaged to a man who seemed like a dream. But something in the silence unnerved her. No city noise, no laughter, no one nearby. Just a horizon too vast to reach, and a heart that suddenly didn't feel her own. The wedding day arrived beneath a sun that burned white against the palace walls. Guests in jeweled robes drifted through the courtyard like figures from a dream. Khalid was calm, composed, untouchable, every gesture rehearsed. Emma felt like a ghost in her own body, moving where she was told, smiling when expected. Cameras flashed, but no one seemed to look at her, only at him. The ceremony lasted minutes. Vows whispered in Arabic she barely understood. Applause that felt distant. Khalid's hand enclosed hers with a grip that bordered on command. When he turned to kiss her, she saw something flash in his eyes. Ownership, not affection. For a heartbeat, the world went silent except for the pounding in her chest. That evening, the reception unfolded in gold and laughter. Music floated through the hall, but the melody felt off. Too slow, too distant. Emma sat beside Khalid at the long banquet table, smiling for strangers who toasted to her obedience more than her happiness. She noticed her phone was missing from her purse. When she asked, Khalid's smile didn't waver. "You won't need it tonight," he said. When the guests departed, the palace fell silent. Khalid guided her to their chamber, a suite large enough to lose herself in. Roses lined the bed. The perfume was so strong it hurt to breathe. He closed the doors behind them with a sound that felt final. The man who had charmed her online was gone. In his place stood someone colder, sharper, entirely in control. That night, Emma's dream fractured. Khalid's words turned to commands, his touch to possession. When she tried to protest, his voice cut through her like a blade. Calm, deliberate, final. He whispered, "You belong to me now." The moonlight fell through the lattice windows, breaking across the floor like bars of silver. She lay awake until dawn, realizing she was no longer free. The morning after the wedding felt strange. The palace staff avoided Emma's gaze. Her phone, her passport, even her camera were nowhere to be found. When she asked Khalid about them, his smile returned. The one she'd once trusted. "You're home now," he said softly. "You won't need those things anymore." The words lingered in the air like smoke. Each room of the palace began to feel identical. Vast, silent, watching. Every time Emma tried to step outside, a guard appeared, polite but firm. Khalid's schedule grew unpredictable. Sometimes he vanished for days. Sometimes he watched her constantly. When she tried to call Layla on the palace landline, the line went dead after a single ring. One night, Khalid invited her to dinner alone. The air between them felt heavy, like the pause before a storm. "You don't understand what love means here," he said. "It's not freedom, it's trust." He placed his hand on hers, his voice soft but unyielding. "And trust means you stay." Emma smiled faintly, hiding the tremor in her fingers. She finally understood what he wanted wasn't a wife. It was possession. That night, Emma searched the corridors after everyone slept. She found a small servant's entrance leading outside, locked from the other side. The moonlight filtered through the lattice, painting her shadow across the wall. For the first time, she allowed herself to think the word she'd avoided for weeks. Prison. In the days that followed, Khalid's patience thinned. The softness vanished from his tone, replaced by quiet warning. He controlled her meals, her movements, her silence. Every smile now felt like a test she had to pass. At night, she pressed her hand against the window pane, tracing the horizon with her eyes. Somewhere out there, freedom waited. If she could survive long enough to reach it, days blurred into one another. The same corridors, the same empty rooms. Khalid was often gone, but his presence lingered in the eyes of the guards. Every door clicked shut behind her. Every step echoed too loudly. The silence had weight. Emma began to notice small details. A missing key on a ring. A window that didn't seal completely. A servant who looked away when she passed. Somewhere inside the stillness, she began to search for cracks. One afternoon, she found Amir waiting by the car in the courtyard. He offered a polite nod. Nothing more. But in that fleeting glance, something unspoken passed between them. Pity, recognition, maybe even guilt. She wanted to speak, but a guard appeared before she could move. Later that night, a folded note appeared beneath her door. 3 words: "Be ready soon." The note became her lifeline. She read it over and over until the paper softened in her hands. Each night, she waited for footsteps outside her door. Sometimes Amir's, sometimes Khalid's. Every sound could mean rescue or ruin. When Khalid finally returned from a trip, he seemed almost tender again. "You've been quiet," he said. Emma smiled faintly, hiding the fear behind her calm. "I've been learning," she answered. The palace became a map in her mind. Which halls creaked, which doors stayed unguarded after midnight. Amir began leaving small clues. A scarf draped over a certain chair. A light flicked twice near the courtyard gate. Each gesture spoke louder than words. Emma knew he was risking everything. So was she. That night, Emma stood again by her window, the same one she'd once seen as her only escape. Now it was a compass. Beyond the desert horizon, a faint light shimmered, a passing truck on the distant road, or maybe hope itself. She didn't know how or when, but she knew she would run. Not for love, not even for freedom, but to remember who she was, filled every corner of her life. The plan began on a whisper. Amir would distract the guards during Khalid's weekly business dinner. Emma would slip through the service corridor and reach the car waiting by the back gate. The route had to be perfect. 10 minutes from freedom or capture. When night fell, Emma stood in silence, feeling her pulse echo in her wrists. The air tasted like metal and sand. Amir appeared in the courtyard, speaking calmly with 2 guards. His voice carried, measured and steady, drawing their attention just long enough. Emma slipped through the side gate, her bare feet silent against the stone. For the first time in months, she breathed air that wasn't filtered through fear. The desert was colder than she imagined. The sand whispered beneath her feet as she ran toward the distant lights. A black SUV waited at the edge of the compound. Amir's silhouette stood by the driver's door, scanning the horizon. "Quickly," he said. Before they notice, the engine roared to life, shattering the silence like a heartbeat too loud. They drove in silence. Behind them, the palace lights began to flicker. Someone had noticed. Amir gripped the wheel tightly, his eyes locked ahead. "There's a checkpoint ahead," he warned. "We'll have to go off-road." The tires left the asphalt, cutting across the dark dunes. The car jolted violently, headlights sweeping over endless sand. Emma held her breath with every bump, praying the horizon would never end. Far behind them, sirens began to rise, faint, then nearer, then swallowed by the wind. Amir turned off the headlights, coasting the car into a dry ravine. The world went dark, except for the stars. They waited, not speaking, not breathing, until the sound faded. When dawn finally touched the horizon, Emma saw the faint outline of a highway ahead. For the first time, she smiled without fear. She was almost free. The sun climbed slowly above the horizon, washing the desert in pale gold. Emma and Amir followed the road until a small border checkpoint appeared ahead. Her heart pounded with every kilometer, each one a step further from Khalid, from the silence, from the life that had almost erased her. When the guard waved them through, she finally exhaled. For the first time, her lungs didn't burn with fear. They reached a foreign consulate by mid-morning. Inside, sterile air and fluorescent lights felt almost unreal after months of marble and gold. An officer offered Emma water and a phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed a familiar number. When Layla's voice answered, she couldn't speak. Only sob quietly until her friend whispered, "You're safe now. Just come home." Weeks later, back in London, Emma moved through the city like a ghost, relearning her reflection. Reporters wanted interviews, strangers wanted her story. But she spoke carefully, choosing words like stones on thin ice. "Love can blind you," she told them, "but control doesn't look like love." Her voice didn't shake. It never would again. Khalid's arrest made headlines months later. His empire cracked under investigation. The business empire had used to hide coercion and fraud. Emma didn't celebrate. Justice felt hollow, but necessary. She sent one final message to Amir, who had disappeared after helping her escape. "You saved my life. I hope you found yours." One evening, she returned to the riverbank where she used to take photographs. The city lights shimmered on the water. She lifted her camera, hands steady again, and took a single shot. Not to forget, but to remember that she survived. The sound of the shutter echoed softly, a heartbeat in the night.